On September 19th, 2003, 25-year-old Joy Ricker vanished without a trace. Her friends were worried sick and desperate to find her, but one person who didn't seem to be worried was Joy's husband, Pastor Sean Goff. And as the police dug deeper into the mystery of Joy's disappearance, they started uncovering some dark family secrets. Shan Goff was not an ordinary pastor. He was actually the leader of an underground network of polygamists. Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Summer Sanchez, and on this channel we talk about crime, cults, and heinous history. So if that sounds interesting to you, please consider subscribing and turning on notifications. As you can probably tell, my voice is a little stuffy today. I'm not feeling that great, but I really needed to get a video out because I haven't posted in like 3 weeks. But I'm back now, and today we're talking about Pastor Sean Goff. But before we get into the case, let's briefly talk about today's sponsor. This video is sponsored by Raycon. We all know about Raycon. They are well known for producing high quality premium audio, and right now is the perfect time to give Raycon a try because Black Friday is just around the corner and they are offering some pretty amazing deals. They are doubling down on their already affordable prices, and they're offering up to 30% off site-wide. I have the Raycon everyday earbuds and I use them all the time. I use them for work, when I go for a run, or if I'm just doing chores and mindlessly listening to YouTube videos. They're super comfortable in my ear, and I really like that they include different size gel tips. I have really tiny ears and I have a hard time keeping earbuds in my ear, especially when I'm working out and like moving around a lot. I can't tell you how many times I've been on a run and I've had an earbud just fall out of my ear mid-run. It's super annoying. And I don't have that problem with my Raycons. They fit perfectly snug and they do not move. There are lots of new features on the latest model of the everyday earbuds, including a 32-hour battery life and multi-point connectivity that allows you to pair with 2 devices at once. I can definitely attest to the long battery life because I use these a lot while I'm editing. I have marathon editing sessions and these last a very long time. They also have noise cancellation capabilities, which helps tremendously. I have 4 kids and 4 dogs and I work from home, so noise cancellation is a must-have for me. And the new quick charge function is really nice because just 10 minutes of charge equates to 90 minutes of battery life. And the everyday earbuds are also now weatherproof and sweat resistant. They come in a variety of colors as well, so you don't have to go with the standard black or white if you want something different or more vibrant. They also have these really cute protective cases that come in a variety of colors. So whether you're looking for something for yourself or maybe a gift for someone special, now is the time to save big for Black Friday and go to buyraycon.com/summersanchez and get up to 30% off site-wide. And if for some reason you're not as impressed as I am, Raycon offers a 30-day happiness guarantee, so you really have nothing to lose. Again, that's buyraycon.com/summersanchez to get up to 30% off today, and using that link does help to support this channel. A big thank you to Raycon for sponsoring this video, and now let's get into the case. Sean Barclay Goff was born in 1967, and unfortunately I don't really know much about his early life except for the fact that he was very, very religious, and at a young age he adopted some fundamentalist-like beliefs. He believed in traditional old-school family dynamics. The man was the boss, the wife needed to just look pretty and do whatever she was told. She needed to cook, clean, take care of the kids. But Sean knew that he didn't want to limit himself to just one wife. He wanted to have multiple wives at the same time. And according to Sean, at the age of only 8 years old, he had decided that he would grow up to become a polygamist. When you hear that he wanted to be a polygamist, you'd probably assume that Sean had grown up in the Mormon church because polygamy is notoriously associated with Mormons, specifically fundamentalist Mormons. But Sean actually was not Mormon. He was a member of the Pentecostal church. And at a young age, he set his sights on becoming a pastor one day. And by the time Sean was in his early 20s, he was already running his own church. He became the pastor of a church in Oklahoma City, and his congregation loved him. He was very charismatic, he was charming. He was also described as being very attractive, and he could command a room. He was a very gifted preacher. People who have attended Sean's church services have said that he was a fantastic speaker, and he had truly found his calling.
If you would say within yourself, I haven't walked in the Spirit like I could, and you want to see God be the head of your life, slip up your hand quickly.
But behind the scenes, Sean was not at all what he pretended to be. He had a dark side. First of all, he was an egomaniac. He was extremely controlling, he was manipulative, and he truly thought of himself as a godlike figure. But worst of all, Sean seemed to have a thing for teenage girls. Sean knew exactly what he wanted out of his ideal wife, and he thought that if he found a young teenage girl and started to groom her early enough, that he could shape her to be exactly what he wanted her to be. And if he could find someone within his own church, he would have even more control over her. Sean wanted his future wife or wives to view him not as a partner, but as basically a god. And having someone like that leading a church can be extremely dangerous. We've seen it time and time again. So Sean starts his search for his perfect victim, the person that he could groom and manipulate. And to aid in this quest, he becomes the leader of his church's youth group. And this is when he meets a 15-year-old girl named Sheila. Sean started grooming Sheila right away. At this point, Sean was 22 and Sheila was only 15 years old. So not only was this wrong morally, but it was illegal. But Sheila and Sean enter into what I assume is a secret relationship. I'm actually not sure if her family knew what was happening. And over the next year and a half, Sean shaped Sheila to be exactly what he wanted. And when Sheila turned 17, she and Sean got married. As you can probably guess, this was not a good marriage. There were problems right from the start. First of all, Sean completely controlled everything that Sheila did. She couldn't think for herself. She couldn't have a career unless it was approved by him first. He was also really mean to Sheila about her weight and her appearance. He wanted his wife to be seen as the perfect wife, and he would become very loud and aggressive towards Sheila if she did anything to make him angry. And because Sheila had been essentially brainwashed starting at the age of only 15 to become Sean's ideal wife, she felt powerless, and so she would just obey whatever he said. So things go on like this for a few years, and then in 1993, Sheila and Sean moved to San Diego, California. Sean had received a job opportunity working as a writer for a religious magazine called Victory Miracle Living. This magazine was ran by a very popular televangelist named Morris Cerullo. Now, I fell down a rabbit hole during my research into Morris Cerullo, so we're going to take a slight detour here just to appreciate how disgusting this man was. So Morris Cerullo was a Pentecostal televangelist, and he was well known for his faith healing. For decades, he convinced thousands of people that he could heal their various ailments, including vision problems, back problems, headaches, epilepsy, even cancer. And he amassed millions and millions of dollars over the years through donations, fees for his conventions, and his faith healings. He also wrote like 80 books or something crazy like that. He had so much money that he bought fellow televangelists Jim and Tammy Faye Bakker's assets when they went bankrupt.
When I tell you to, I want you to put your hand where the physical infirmity is. In Jesus' name, you are going to do the thing that you could not do before. If you had one eye that was blind, you'll take your hand off of the blind eye, you'll put your hand over the good eye, and you'll see out of that blind eye. The same with your deaf ear, the same with growths. If you have goiters, if you have tumors, if you have ruptures, if you have heart trouble, put your hand on your stomach. If you've got stomach problem, put your hand on your back. If you've got a back problem, put your hand wherever the sickness is. It's a point of contact, that's all. Press, 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 press.
There are countless stories on the internet about Morris Cerullo. I can't get into everything, but there are a couple of stories that I think are important to mention. I will be including clips related to these stories, and I do want to warn you that they are pretty devastating to watch. So Morris would travel all around the world doing miracle healings to massive audiences. He would bring people up on stage and pray over them and claim to cure whatever was ailing them. He would also have people who had already been cured come up on stage and give their testimony. And during a convention in the UK, a woman got up on stage and shared her testimony with the crowd. She said that Morris had healed her, but of course that was not actually the case, and this story ended in tragedy. She stopped taking her anti-seizure medication, and not long after giving that testimony, she had a seizure while taking a bath, and she drowned and died.
How do you know that your leg is healed?
Because I can jump. I can jump.
You can.
And I can jump.
Let me see you jump. I said, by those stripes, we are healed. Go on, put your hand in them. By those stripes, you're healed. You're healed. You're healed. You're healed.
I'm pretty sure that I've shared this before on this channel, but I had epilepsy as a child. When I was about 9 years old, I had my first seizure. I was in the hospital for about 3 days undergoing pretty much every test imaginable, but they never could figure out what had caused me to suddenly have this massive seizure. They put me on medication. It was called Tegretol, and I hated it. It made me super lethargic. I wasn't my normal hyper self, but it did keep the seizures at bay. Then about 6 months later, I decided that I was cured and I just wasn't going to take my medicine anymore. And in my 9-year-old brain, since I hadn't had a seizure in months, I thought that I was all better. I didn't tell anyone. I would just hide my pills under my mattress. And for a few weeks, everything was fine. I thought that I was good. But then one night I went to bed and again, I had another massive seizure. Long story short, I did get back on my medication and I stayed on it until a doctor told me that I no longer needed it. I think I was like 11 when I finally was able to get off the medication. I'm fast approaching 40 now and I've been fine ever since. But my whole point in telling that story was to just show how serious medical illnesses cannot be taken lightly. And it's really sad to see desperate people searching for a cure, some sense of normalcy, being taken advantage of by people who hold so much influence and power. And if this woman hadn't have been lied to by Morris Cerullo, she likely would have stayed on her medication and she could still be alive today. The last story that I want to mention involves a little girl named Natalia Barnett. Natalia was very sick. She had been diagnosed with cancer and it had spread to her bones, and she was literally fighting for her life. Out of desperation, Natalia's mother brought her to one of Morris Cerullo's conventions. So Morris brings Natalia up on stage and he does his prayer over her. And according to him, she was now free of cancer. He tells Natalia's mother to take her back to the doctor after the convention was over, not to get more treatment, but to have the doctors run tests to prove that Natalia was in fact cured. He's giving this mother and this little girl false hope, but Morris decides to take things one step further. During this whole disgusting display, Natalia was obviously very sick. You can tell by the way she looks that she is exhausted. She feels miserable, but Morris, just to further push his miracle healing bullshit and play it up to the audience, he tells Natalia to run to show the crowd that she was now cancer-free. I guess in Morris's mind, if Natalia could run, she didn't have cancer in her bones anymore. Natalia does not want to run and she starts to cry, but Morris insisted and he grabbed her by her hand and he forced her to run across the stage. I do have footage of this and I am going to play the clip because I think it's important that people see just how messed up this whole thing is. If you don't want to see it, I don't blame you because it is heartbreaking to watch. So I will put a timestamp on the screen so you can just skip ahead.
Run! Run! Run with me. Do you feel any pain in your legs?
No.
No pain at all?
No.
Just run just a little bit with me. Come on, run just a little bit with me. Oh, yes. Put your hand up. Cancer in the bones.
She has cancer in the blood and the bones. It's all over.
Cancer in the blood and in the bones. I want you to just raise your hand and say, Father, I thank you for the healing of the cancer of the bones. Go on, give him praise. Go on, darling. Go on. Get her back to the doctor right away, and in the next day or two, you come and tell us what they tell you as they verify the healing.
And of course, when Natalia's mother took her back to the doctor, she was not cured. In fact, her condition had only gotten worse. She needed additional blood transfusions and other treatments. And sadly, in the end, Natalia passed away from cancer just 2 months after that miracle healing convention. Morris had used a dying child to further brainwash his followers into believing his BS miracles. Why not just pray over these people? Why lie to them and tell them that you're curing them when you know you're not? Especially something like cancer. I'm sure that some people in the comments will be mad at me because Morris does have a lot of loyal followers still to this day. There is a Morris Cerullo YouTube channel where you can watch footage of some of these conventions. He passed away in 2020 from pneumonia, I'm assuming as a result of COVID, I don't really know. But there are still people in the comments of his videos on YouTube that defend him. So yeah, that was Morris. I know that was a massive detour in the story, but I needed to talk to someone about this guy because it's just, I find this whole thing so gross. Now back to the actual case. Like I said, Sean and Sheila make the move to San Diego, California California in 1993 so that Sean can become a writer for Morris Cerullo's Miracle magazine or whatever it's called. And he does amazingly well at this job, and he eventually gets promoted to director of communications. And he even starts appearing on Morris Cerullo's televangelist programs. He becomes like an MC. In addition to everything that he's doing at the Morris Cerullo Ministries, Sean also lands a pastor position at a local church, and again, his congregation falls in love with him. He is seen as this really great guy, he's a phenomenal preacher, and everything in Sean's life seems to be going great. But it's around this time that Sean starts to get a little bored with his home life, and he starts to think that maybe it's finally time to act on that childhood dream of polygamy. He and Sheila have been married for a few years by this point, and he's just bored, I guess, and he decides that he wants something new and exciting and young. Sheila has no clue about this plan to bring in another wife because Sean never mentioned that he wanted to live a polygamous lifestyle before they got married. But Sean sets out on this quest to find another wife, and once again, he throws himself into the youth ministry at his church, and he is on the hunt for another young teenage girl to groom and shape into what he wants her to be. And this is when he meets 15-year-old Joy Ricker. At the time, Joy was living with her mother Gwen, and it was just the two of them. Her father had walked out on them about 7 years earlier. They did struggle financially a bit, but overall they were very happy. Joy and Gwen were extremely close. They were basically best friends. Joy was described as an amazing person. She was happy and bubbly. She had a ton of friends. Everyone loved to be around her. She was also very easy to get along with. She was just a really great person. As Joy got older, she started to get a little more wild. She started attending raves and stuff, and her mother Gwen was worried about her. You know, she wanted to make sure that her daughter stayed on the right path. Now, Gwen was a very religious woman, and she attended church multiple times a week. And this church that she attended just happened to be the church that Sean Goff was now the pastor of. Joy also attended church, but she really only did it to, make her mother happy. She knew it was important to her. But Gwen started to think that it would be good for Joy to become more involved in the church. Maybe this would get her to reassess her life and make better choices. And so Gwen seeks the advice of her pastor, Sean Goff. She tells Sean that she wants to get her daughter more involved in the church, and she asks for his advice on how to do that. And that was all it took. Sean then set his sights on 15-year-old Joy Ricker, and he took her under his wing. He started paying a lot of attention to Joy under the guise of being the caring pastor. And because of this, Joy does become more involved in the church, and she ends up joining the youth ministry. And of course, Sean Goff was the youth minister, which gave him even more access to Joy. And Sean begins to essentially do the same thing to Joy that he had done with Sheila. He started giving her a lot of attention and making her feel really special, which made Joy want to go to church even more. And so she started volunteering. She started attending church multiple times a week. And Sean even made Joy his assistant. There was a pretty big age gap between Sean and Joy. And so in the beginning, Joy looked at Sean as a father figure, which makes the situation even more disturbing. And Gwen was extremely happy that Joy had become more involved in the church. And she was extremely grateful for the relationship between Joy and Pastor Sean. To her, it was amazing having her pastor, someone that she looked up to and she trusted, take her daughter under his wing. And so she too thought Sean had filled a void that Joy's father had left when he walked out. So from the outside, things seem innocent. But of course, we know what Sean's true intentions are. Now, Sheila was actually pregnant at this point. She was pregnant with her and Sean's one and only child. And while she was at home taking care of all the chores at the house and growing a human being, Sean was out hanging around the youth group grooming a 15-year-old girl. Over time, Joy's feelings towards Sean started to change, and she was no longer thinking of him as a father figure, and she started to develop a crush. The research is a little unclear on when exactly the dynamic of Joy and Sean's relationship shifted. I've seen conflicting accounts. Some sources say that nothing physical happened until after Joy was of age, but according to court documents, Sean and Joy's relationship became intimate while Sheila was pregnant. But either way, the relationship was inappropriate for sure, and Sean and Joy became inseparable. He even started inviting Joy over to his and Sheila's home for dinner. Joy would come over and play with the baby because by this point, Sheila had given birth to the baby. She had a little boy that they named Kaylin, and Joy and Sheila really seemed to hit it off in the beginning. Of course, Sheila did not know what was going on between Sean and Joy at this point. And just to make the situation even more twisted, Sean offered Joy a job as Kaylin's nanny. And this would be a live-in nanny position. So Sean would be able to be with Joy all the time, and he would be able to watch Joy's every move. So Joy moves in, and she essentially becomes a member of the Goff family, which is exactly what Sean wants. He wants to slowly integrate Joy into his family. So life goes on like this for a while. Joy is living with Sean and Sheila and their son, and she and Sean have this weird, manipulative, potentially physical, secret thing going on in the background. And then one day, Sean approached Sheila and he finally reveals to her that he wanted to have multiple wives. He tells Sheila that he really wants to take on another wife and that he thinks Joy would be the perfect fit for their family. Sheila was understandably shocked and upset when she heard this, but he wouldn't let up, and one way or another, Sean always got his way, and eventually Sheila gave in. So in 1997, Sean and Joy secretly got married. A minister from Utah conducted the ceremony, and Joy was really happy. She felt like she finally had a complete family. She couldn't see how twisted this situation was. Sean had started out as a father figure to her, and now he is her husband. And this marriage had to be kept a secret. No one could find out that Sean and Joy had gotten married because Sean knew that he would immediately be kicked out of the church. He would lose his position as pastor. And Sean also knew that his position working for Morris Cerullo would also be in jeopardy if anyone found out. No one wanted to be associated with a polygamist, but it did not take long for the secret to get out. Sean accidentally sent a copy of a personal email to one of his friends, and the contents of that email exposed everything. In the email, Sean was thanking the minister who'd performed his and Joy's wedding ceremony. The friend, whose name was Leif, saw the email, immediately realized what was going on, and he called Sean up and he was like, "Are you a polygamist?" Sean denied it at first, but Leif told him about that email that he'd seen, and Sean knew that he was caught. Leif knew that he needed to tell someone about this. So he calls up Sean's brother and he says, "Sean has married Joy. He is practicing plural marriage. What do I do? Do I tell the church?" Sean's brother says, "You need to tell him that either he tells the ministry himself or you're going to expose him." So Leif tells this to Sean, but he essentially refused to tell the ministry and he refused to give up his lifestyle. And so Leif felt like he had no other choice, and he went to the ministry and he told them exactly what was going on, and Sean was immediately kicked out of the church. And he was also let go from his job with Morris Cerullo. Sean's brother called Gwen and told her about the secret wedding between Joy and Sean, and she was absolutely shocked. The entire time that Joy had been living with the Goffs and getting closer and closer with the family, Gwen thought that it was because Joy had found a father figure, and Gwen was now forced to shift her perception of Joy and Sean's relationship so dramatically, and it was really creepy and unsettling for her. But over time, she did accept the relationship, mostly because she didn't want to lose her daughter, and she thought that if she pushed back at all, Joy might pull away from her. Once the secret was out and Sean was kicked out of the church, Sean, Joy, and Sheila didn't really try to hide it anymore. They didn't shout it from the rooftops or anything, but Joy did tell her friends, and she and Sean would also go out on dates and stuff, so they weren't being as careful. Now, the dynamic in the house wasn't great at first. Joy and Sheila did not get along in the beginning of the marriage. Now that they were sharing a husband, things got a little tense in the house. There was naturally some jealousy. Sheila was now having to share her husband with another woman, but they did eventually fall into a routine. The women would help each other around the house with chores and stuff, and so they did learn to lean on each other. Sean had a very detailed schedule for whose room he'd sleep in each night. This schedule has been described as militaristic. And just like with Sheila, Sean was extremely controlling towards Joy, and he would constantly be watching over her shoulder and telling her who she could and couldn't talk to. Sean basically didn't want Joy or Sheila to have social lives. He wanted them at home with him pretty much at all times, and so Joy ended up losing touch with a lot of her friends. At one point, Joy asked Sean if she could register for college courses just to give her something, but he said no. He wanted her home. Sean was at the center of everything. He wanted to be seen like a god in that house, and he would always be bossing the women around. Sean and Joy went to a friend's wedding once, and people witnessed the way Sean treated Joy, and they were concerned. Sean was extremely demanding, and he would order Joy to get up and get him a drink or get him food, and he was doing this in front of everyone at this wedding. There was another time when Sean and Joy went to a party together. This party was actually for Joy's 21st birthday, and at first, everything was okay. Sean and Joy were dancing together, but Sean tired out much faster than Joy did, and he left the dance floor and he went and sat down at a table. But Joy did not follow him. She continued dancing with her friends. And as the night progressed, people could see Sean's demeanor completely change. He was obviously no longer having fun. And then one of Joy's old friends from high school arrived at the party. And like I said, Joy hadn't really been hanging around her friends much at this point, and this person hadn't seen Joy in a while. And so he walked up to Joy to greet her and he gave her a hug. And Sean is watching this from the table and he is seething with rage over this. So he gets up, he walks over to the guy and he punched him in the face. So this is now Joy's life, and I think Joy would have been starting to wonder if she'd made a huge mistake. But then in the year 2000, Joy got pregnant with her first child, and Sean was over the moon about this because he knew that this would trap Joy even further. This is how he would ensure that Joy would never leave him. He would always use his children as weapons against their mothers. If he got any pushback at all from Sheila or Joy, he would tell them that if they ever left, they would never see their children again. Joy ended up having a son that she named Stone, and she was so happy. But the next day after she gave birth to her son, she got the news that her mother had passed away, and Joy was absolutely devastated. Gwen was the only family that Joy had, and now she was gone, and so she took the news very hard. Joy ended up getting pregnant pretty quickly after she had her first child, and she had a second son that she named Onyx in 2002. And it was after the birth of her second son that people started to see a shift in Joy. She didn't seem happy with Sean anymore. She was just getting fed up with not having a life outside of Sean. And she was also getting fed up with the way that Sean treated both her and Sheila. Sheila seemed to catch the brunt of a lot of the verbal abuse, and Sheila and Joy started to bond over their mutual unhappiness in the marriage. They started supporting each other more, and Sheila has said that she came to view Joy as a sister. But this is when things take a very dark turn. Joy and Sheila started to team up against Sean, and they would do things to try to take back some of the control. And one way that they did this was by cutting off Sean's sex supply. Sean was a very, very sexual person, and he would always be alternating between Sheila and Joy. And in the beginning, the women would be jealous over who got to spend the night with Sean that night. But now it was the opposite. Neither of them wanted to sleep with Sean anymore. So they started refusing to have sex with him. If it was Joy's night to have sex with him, she would say that she had a headache and she didn't feel like it. And so then he'd go to Sheila's room and she would say the same thing. And this made Sean really angry because he was used to being in total control and he was used to the women fighting over him. For someone with a God complex like Sean has, this was a massive hit to his ego. So Sean decides to get revenge on Sheila and Joy, and he starts to look for a third wife. He thinks that if Joy and Sheila are going to be defiant, then he'll just bring in another woman who will give him exactly what he wants. So he starts searching for another wife online within the underground polygamist community. There are lots of people in the United States that secretly practice polygamy, and they have like their own little secret network. And after Sean was let go from his Morris Cerullo job and his position as pastor, he got online and he started looking for people that were like-minded, people who were Christians who practiced plural marriage. And he ended up discovering this forum of anonymous polygamists local to his area, and he discovered that there were a lot of polygamists living in San Diego. So Sean sees an opportunity here, and he starts chatting with some of the other polygamists on the forum, and using his charm and his charisma, he very quickly became a leader in the community. And he ends up starting an online ministry of polygamists with him as the pastor. Sean started hosting in-person Bible studies and retreats, and he became a well-known leader within that underground polygamous world. And once Sean discovered this secret online network, it opened up a whole new world of pro-polygamous websites to him, and that is how he found his third wife. So he goes onto this polygamous dating website, and the way this thing is set up, like the men just go onto this website and they just pick out a wife to add to their family. And this is exactly what Sean did. At least this time, the woman was of legal age. This woman, whose name was Becky, she was 23 years old and she lived in Maryland. And before she had even met Sean in person, she agreed to join his family as his third wife. So Sean makes arrangements to go to Maryland and pick Becky up and bring her back to his home in San Diego. And the situation is really bad right from the start. It quickly became apparent that Becky was struggling with some sort of severe mental illness. It's thought that she was suffering from multiple personality disorder, or DID, which is what it's called now. Becky was very emotionally unstable. She went by several different names, and she would become a totally different person at the drop of a hat. And understandably, Sheila and Joy were very uncomfortable with the situation. They did not know this woman whatsoever, and now she is living in their home with their children, and she is acting extremely erratically. Sean knew that he was in over his head and he had made a huge mistake, but he didn't want to give up immediately and send her home. And so instead, he started conducting exorcisms right there in his house. He thought that he could heal Becky of these demons that were inside of her. But of course, these exorcisms did not work. And after about a month, Sean sent Becky back to Maryland. And when Becky left, Sean just became even more controlling towards Sheila and Joy. But Joy was done being controlled by Sean, and she was really starting to see him for who he actually was, a master manipulator, and she wanted out of the marriage. And she started making decisions for herself. She enrolled in college without his permission. She started going out with her old friends and rekindling those friendships. Sean could see the writing on the wall. He knew that Joy was not going to be around for much longer, and he decided that he needed to do something to keep her from leaving. Sean had built himself up to be the ideal polygamist within that underground network, and he could not let Joy tarnish his image. If anyone found out that he had lost control over one of his wives, that would be a major hit to his ego and his reputation. In late 2003, Joy gets up the courage and she tells Sean that she's moving out and she is going to take the kids with her. This led to a massive argument, and Sean told Joy that she would never take the boys with her if she decided to leave. So Joy decided that the best course of action here was to just drop the subject for now and pretend that everything was going to be okay. But really, she would be secretly putting her escape plan into motion, securing a place to stay, getting a job, and this act seemed to work, and things did settle down for a few weeks, or at least that's what Joy thought. But in reality, Sean was also secretly putting his own plan into motion, and he was planning Joy's murder. Sean went to Lowe's and purchased various items, including a shovel, a sledgehammer, rope, knives, cutting boards, a hacksaw, and a pickaxe. And he also rented an SUV. Sean asked Joy if she would spend the weekend with him in an attempt to rekindle their relationship. Joy did agree to this, but this was probably just part of her plan to lay low and go along with whatever he wanted until she could figure out her exit plan. Sean asked Sheila to take all three of the kids to Santa Barbara for the weekend so that he and Joy could have some alone time, and she agreed. So on the morning of September 19th, 2003, Sheila and the kids left and headed to Santa Barbara, and Sean and Joy went out to dinner that evening, and then they returned back home. Joy made a phone call to Sheila at around 9:30 p.m. just to check in on her boys, make sure everything was okay, and that was the last time anyone ever heard from Joy. At some point that night, Sean stabbed Joy multiple times. He also used a sledgehammer to beat Joy on her head, her face, and her body. Once Joy was dead, Sean dismembered her body and removed certain parts in an attempt to conceal her identity. He removed her teeth and her fingers. He also used the sledgehammer and hacksaw to further mutilate her face in order to make Joy completely unrecognizable if she was ever found. He then put Joy's remains in the rented SUV to dispose of her body. The next day, as Sheila was on her way home from the trip to Santa Barbara, she got a strange call from Sean. He sounded very upset, and he told Sheila that Joy had left him for another man. And he also said, oh, by the way, Joy cut herself pretty badly before she left. She's fine, but there is some blood in the house. And when you get home, I need you to go and clean it up. Sheila thought that this was strange, but she says okay, like she normally did. But when she arrived home, she could tell things were weird. First of all, the blinds were closed, and the blinds were never closed. Some of the rugs in the house were missing, and there was blood everywhere. This wasn't just a little puddle of blood. Sheila found blood on the shower curtain, all over the walls of the bathroom. There was blood in Joy's bedroom, on the mattress and blankets. She also noticed that Sean had scratches on his arms and his clothes were all ripped up. And the SUV that he'd rented was absolutely filthy. There was dirt all over both the interior and exterior of the vehicle. But despite all of this, Sheila didn't ask any questions. She just did as she was told, and she cleaned up the blood. Sean actually forced Sheila to clean up his crime scene. Over the next few weeks, Sean started telling anyone and everyone that Joy had left him with the kids and she had run off with an old boyfriend and they were on their way to Europe. During this time, Joy's friends are just calling her repeatedly. And of course, there's no answer, and they're getting more and more worried by the day. And they're not buying Sean's story that she ran off with another man. They knew that she would never leave her kids. So in early October, they decided to call the police and report Joy missing. And it was around this time that some of her friends started receiving emails from Joy's account. The emails were addressed from Joy, and she was telling her friends to essentially leave her alone and let her find herself. And her friends immediately knew that something wasn't right. Joy did not speak like that. Those emails could not be from her. So police start the investigation by speaking to Sean. They go over to the Goff house and they ask some questions, and he told them the same story, that Joy was fine, she had just run off with another man, and she was in Europe. But while the police were at the house, they noticed that Joy's belongings were all gone. Like, there was no trace of Joy left in that house. And they also learned about the polygamous lifestyle that Sean, Sheila, and Joy were living and that Joy was not happy in the marriage. So police look at Joy's phone records. They think, okay, if she actually did leave with another man, surely this would reflect in the phone records. But they see that the last call made was to Sean, and it was on the night of September 19th, the night that Joy supposedly left. After that night, all calls stopped, which meant that her phone was turned off and it had been inactive for weeks. So police bring Sean in again and they ask him about that call between him and Joy the night of the 19th. He says, well, we got into a fight that night and I left the house and Joy called me to tell me to come back so we could talk it out. He said he returned home and they went to bed, and then when he woke up the next morning, he found Joy packing her bags and she said she was done, she was leaving him and she was going to Europe, and he saw her leave with another man. And this was the first of many times that Sean changed his story. He's added some elements, he's subtracted some elements, and so Sean quickly becomes suspect number one. Sean knows that police are onto him and he becomes a total wreck. He couldn't eat, he couldn't sleep, he lost like 20 pounds in the matter of a few weeks. He knew that it was only a matter of time before they arrested him. And so Sean decided to go to the police station and turn himself in. He sits down and he confesses that he killed Joy Ricker. But he says, I didn't murder her though. I killed her, but I didn't murder her. Sean said that Joy was killed accidentally, but that's all he would say. And then he asked for a lawyer.
I came down here to turn myself in. I killed Joy Ricker.
There's a location evidently where her body is?
I'm not sure if I should answer that question at this time.
Sean planned to use a self-defense strategy, and he thought that if they couldn't find a body, then they couldn't prove that it wasn't self-defense. But in January of 2004, prosecutors got the break they needed. Two people were hiking in the desert in Maricopa County, Arizona, and they came across what looked like a Native American burial site. There were stacks of stones, and it looked like a shrine. So the hikers got a little closer, and as they approached the shrine, they are suddenly hit with the stench of death, and so they called the police. And as the police took down the stones, they started finding human body parts. And this person had obviously died an absolutely brutal death. A DNA test confirmed that these were the remains of Joy Ricker. Sean's trial began in June of 2006. By this point, the prosecution had accumulated so much evidence to prove that this was a premeditated murder. It was not self-defense. First of all, they found a receipt from Lowe's that listed all of the items that Sean had used in the murder, dismemberment, and disposal of Joy's body. The knives, sledgehammer, hacksaw, rope, shovel, everything. This was a murder kit. They also found out about that rented SUV, and they managed to get Sean's total mileage during the time that he was driving it, and it perfectly matched up with the distance between San Diego and Arizona where Joy's body was found. They also discovered that Sean had been the author of those emails that were coming from Joy's email address soon after she disappeared. And after speaking with Sheila, they learned about the blood that Sean had forced her to clean up when she returned home from that weekend trip. Sean actually got on the stand to testify in his defense, and it is annoying and disgusting to watch. He is fake crying and he's doing this really annoying cry voice. He testified that Joy had actually attacked him with the knife. They struggled, and during the struggle, he accidentally stabbed her with the knife. And in his panic, he stabbed her one more time.
She said, you son of a bitch, I will kill you.
He said he only disposed of the body the way he did in order to save himself a prison so his kids wouldn't be without both a mother and a father. But Joy had been stabbed way more than 2 times. The attack on Joy had been horrific. It was obvious that Sean was lying. The jury took only 3 hours to come back with the verdict of guilty of first-degree murder, and Shan Goff was sentenced to 25 years to life. He is currently 57 years old, and he remains incarcerated at Valley State Prison in Chowchilla, California. He did have a parole hearing earlier this year in April of 2024, but thankfully that was denied. But he will be back up for parole in 2027. So let's just hope that that ruling will be the same when that time comes. There is a petition to keep Sean behind bars on change.org, and I will leave the link to that down in the description box if you want to sign it. It was created in the lead up to this year's parole hearing, but it will likely be helpful for the next hearing in 2027. Sheila was also investigated just to make sure she wasn't an accomplice, or, that she had known that Joy was dead during the time that people thought she was just a missing person, but she was cleared. Many people still don't understand how Sheila didn't know anything, especially when she came home to all that blood, and some people think that she knew way more than she let on. But most people believe that she was just so brainwashed and controlled by Sean that she just believed everything he said. Sheila divorced Sean and she moved on with her life, and she has said that leaving that marriage was like a veil was lifted from her and she could finally live her life the way she wants to live it. And that is all I have on this case. Let me know know what you think about this one down in the comments. Don't forget to check out the description box for the link, or go to buyraycon.com/summersanchez to get up to 30% site-wide. If you found this video interesting, please consider subscribing, liking this video, and leaving me a comment. That is the easiest way for you to support me and my channel. And as always, I appreciate each and every one of you for watching, and I will see you next time.